So I took the DNA test and he's not a match with me. So that confirmed he was not the dad. He is not the father. Hello you guys, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't already know me, my name is Brittany. If you're new here, feel free to leave a like, drop a comment, and consider subscribing because that'd be really cool and it'd help me out quite a lot. Don't be afraid to hit that little notification bell to get notified every single time that I post because it is very rarely, if ever. I'm a really busy person. I used to say that in my intro back in the day. It's the same intro, but it is more true now than ever. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I found out through ancestry that my dad wasn't actually my dad. The reason I did the ancestry test was I got it as a Christmas gift from my grandparents, so my mom's parents. They're the ones who raised me. They gave it to me as a Christmas gift, I think in 2019 or 2018, I want to say. I made a YouTube video actually back on it. It's like years back though. But my husband and I both got one. So my grandma took one, my grandpa took one, my husband and me. And mine came back. It had like 8% Native American or something like that. It said indigenous Mexican specifically. Or it said indigenous American and then in parentheses Mexico or Mexican, something like that. And then it also had sub-Saharan African, which was like fucking like 1-2% or something like that. And I was like, like I looked up what percentage would your parent have to be for you to be like say 6 or 8% of something. It said online that your parent would have to be at least like 15 to 20% roughly. Of course, it's just, you know, give or take however many percentages. Genetics are weird like that. Sometimes it'll completely skip somebody. Yeah, it said roughly like 15-20%. I was like, that would have to mean that my parent would have to be approximately 15-20% indigenous Mexican, meaning they could probably still be white passing, yeah, but like they'd probably have some noticeably indigenous features or Mexican features. So that didn't sit right with me. I was like, both my mom and my dad, or the people I have been told are my mom and my dad, are very Caucasian, very white, very, very much white. So I started asking some questions. Mind you, this didn't sit right with me for some years. It wasn't until 2021, after I had my son, that it really just started to not sit right with me even more. So I had the man who I thought was my dad, man who they have raised me. This man I have thought is my father my whole life, right? Now, I was like, okay, paternity tests cost like, what, $400? Like $300, $400, maybe $200 at the cheapest. Paternity tests, not cheap. Ancestry test with the Groupon, it's like $60. So when my grandparents took the ancestry DNA test, it showed up as DNA relative. So it'll show your DNA matches. It'll show like your third cousins, like your people that have like 0 point whatever percent DNA matches with you. My grandparents were like, you know, what, like 50% or like 30% of their DNA, whatever. They showed up as a DNA match. So that confirmed that they are DNA relatives to me. We share DNA, we share blood. So I was like, okay, if this man is actually my dad, he would show up as a DNA match. He would show up as a DNA relative of some sort. Like, he would have to. If he's actually biologically related to me, especially he's my father, he didn't show up. I got him the ancestry DNA test. He took it, and when he was taking it, he was like, so why do you want me to take this? And I was like, just to, you know, I just want to see what all I inherited, what percentages from, because at the time, ancestry didn't have, like, the maternal, paternal side. Now they'll tell you what things you inherited from your paternal side and what things you inherited from your maternal side. They didn't have that back then. So I was just like, oh, I just want to see what all I inherited from you specifically. So he's like, okay, I just gotta ask you, with your, like, DNA stuff, did the last name ever show up? And I was like, yeah, it did. I think. Like, why do you ask? Why, what about that last name specifically? He's like, I'm just curious. Yeah, I'll take it. He knew. Because that's my actual dad's last name. So he's known. Like, yeah. So I took the DNA test and he's not a match with me. So that confirmed he was not the dad. He is not the father. So that started my search. I immediately, the second, like, I had to wait like, what, a month or two for his DNA results to come in. And when it showed he was not a DNA relative and that confirmed he wasn't my dad, I then had to find out who my dad was. So within 24 hours, I found him. I posted a TikTok asking, like, I posted pictures of my mom and I was like, did you bag this woman around 2001? And yeah, like around the date of my conception. and it kind of went viral a little bit. It's got like, what, like 300,000, 500,000 views or something like that. Excuse me. People thought it was real funny. But some people actually started finding my dad on TikTok. Like, they started to look him up because I had posted like what his name probably is. I messaged my mom's former best friend from before my mom passed away, and I asked her if she knew of any like indigenous Mexican, like, you know, also like white men that could potentially, you know, have hung out with my mom quite a lot, because that would fit the profile of whoever is possibly my dad. And she was like, yeah, dad. And I was like, as in your son? Meaning your baby daddy? And she's like, yeah, that's your brother. Your brother. So like, it was this kid that I grew up with like my whole life, until like 8 years old, when my grandma, so my mom's mom, just like cut them out of my life. Turns out he's been my brother the whole time. I found out I have 6 other siblings as well, other than him. Like, and they're out in Utah or something like that, somewhere out west. So yeah, I have like 7 known siblings. I say known because I was unknown. So if I'm unknown, there could be more unknown siblings out there, but I have like 7 known siblings. I was raised as like an only child by my grandparents. So like, and I remember crying and like begging them to have kids, even though they were literally like, they're fixed. He's been clipped, my grandma, full hysterectomy. I remember crying and begging him for siblings. Turns out I have them the whole time. I have a lot of them. Yeah. A lot of crazy shit. Yeah, I pretty much found out, only things I really found out about my dad, initially. So what helped people find out who my dad was, what helped me find out who my dad was, besides asking my mom's best friend, you know, from when she was alive, she told me what his name was. She told me the exact night that I was conceived, because apparently my mom really wanted to have a baby, and the person who I thought was my dad, wasn't getting her pregnant. Like, it just wasn't happening, and she was like, I'm gonna have a baby. So she had a baby, and then she pretty much played it off as being his. You know, she pretty much told this guy who was her best friend's baby daddy that, like, I want to have a kid, and so they had a kid at her best friend's house. Like, her best friend knew. Like, I asked her, and apparently she, like, knew about it the whole time. Like, and I guess that's part of the real reason my grandma cut her out of my life, is because she didn't want me to find out about all this, which I did, because she ended up getting me that ancestry DNA test years later. So secret came out anyway, I guess, grandma. But yeah, so besides what my mom's best friend told me, though, she just gave me his name, basically. She was like, he went to prison like shortly after you were conceived. I was conceived, basically. And haven't heard or seen from him since. So I looked into his arrest records. People on TikTok looked into his arrest records. They found his jail records, and then which went to prison records, his last phone numbers, last addresses. That's how I found out about the siblings over in Utah, because he went to prison, jail and prison here in Florida, got transferred to a prison in Utah, started a family in Utah when he got out of prison, and then I guess went back into the system, and eventually somehow ended up back here in Florida. But yeah, so from the arrest records, I pretty much managed to find some pictures of him. Like, I found obviously like mugshots, and then I found Facebooks, and then I found, you know, other social medias of his throughout the years. And then ancestry also, taking the ancestry DNA test, and which is what led to me finding all this out, really helped, because I was able to, it showed me a DNA relative that was like my second cousin, and it had my dad's last name. So the second cousin is one of your parents' cousins. So this person was basically my dad's cousin. And I messaged him, and I was like, hey, I'm trying to find out who my dad was. I think it's, and then I said who my dad's name was. And I pretty much explained like roughly when I would have been conceived. And he wrote back, and he was like, hey, yeah, me and my cousin, who is who you were saying should be your dad, were in Jacksonville during that time period when you would have been conceived. So he was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, it sounds like he very well could be your father, especially given the fact that he's my cousin and you're showing up as a DNA match relative as a second cousin. So that also put those puzzle pieces together. But the thing is, he has a brother, my biological father. So that means that since I'm matching as this person's second cousin, it could have been either the person who's actually my dad or his brother. It turns out they both knew my mom, but apparently my mom was never interested in his brother from multiple different people's accounts. And yeah, that's pretty much all the little breadcrumbs that led me to piecing together and tracking down who my dad was, all within 24 hours of finding out that who I thought was my dad was not my dad because of ancestry. I did meet my dad. I went and met him, so I tracked him down, found his, it turns out that my dad's cousin, so my second cousin, the one who I reached out to through ancestry, he's retired Navy, but he was also a private detective. So he also said he hadn't heard from his cousin, my dad, since prison, since jail and all that. He was like, I just want to let you know, I'm not even too sure if he's alive. And I was like, that's okay, my mom's dead too, so like, it's, if I find out my dad, you know, my actual dad's also dead, it wouldn't be, what's two dead parents? I already got one, you know. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I already had a dead mom, and then the guy who I thought was my dad pretty much walked out, so I was already an orphan to begin with. I mean, what are you gonna do, tell me I'm an orphan again? Big whoop. But, yeah, so he, tracked him down, because as he was a private detective, I did my detective work. I still think I could have probably tracked him down myself. Just gonna put that out there. But he did track down my dad for me. He's like, I got his phone number, here it is. And then, we talked on the phone, and I heard my dad's voice for the first time, and he remembered the night that he conceived me as well, and his story went perfectly with my mom's best friends, who is his baby mama, the mother of my brother. So even though they don't talk to each other, they haven't spoken to each other since prison, remember, she even didn't know whether or not he was alive or not, and their stories matched up perfectly. Two people who haven't spoken to each other since the year 2000. So, yeah, it sounds like the stories are pretty legit. If those accounts are a match, then there's my truth, you know? But I found out through him, through my biological dad, his mom died from metastatic breast cancer, so she had stage 4, meaning it had spread to the lymph nodes. She had a double mastectomy, and she still died. So things like that is why this is so important, you know? Like, I now know that I have to be very she was only 39, I believe. 38 or 39 when she died of stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. That's important to know. That's really important to know. Like, that is my medical history, my family medical history, and that's extremely important to know, especially as a woman. So shit like that, like, I'm glad I found all this out, you know? Because it's really hard navigating all this when my mom's dead, you know? I can't just be like, hey, ma, whose nutsack did I come from? But yeah. A lot has happened. A lot has happened. I haven't made a YouTube video in, like, what? A year now? 2 years? A lot of different shit's happened. The next video is going to be more life updates. I just didn't want to make this video super long, because this story in and of itself, this update in and of itself, kind of crazy, just a little bit. Yeah, you know, like, because it comes with finding out the people who I thought were my cousins aren't my cousins. The person who I thought was my brother isn't my brother, you know? Like, it's more than just, like, finding out my dad isn't my dad. Like, the person who I thought was my grandparents on that side, not my grandparents. Like, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. It's been, like, a whole year since I found out. A year and, like, 3 months, I think, since I found out. So I've had some time to sit with it, but it doesn't make it any less crazy. Every now and then I'll just think about it again, and I'm like, damn, my whole life I've just been calling a stranger dad. I mean, he's not really a stranger, but, you know, biological stranger. Yeah, that's how I used ancestry to find out the true paternity. I found out whose nutsack I came from because of ancestry. Yep. That's the video. Yep. So I hope y'all enjoyed the story time of finding out whose nutsack I actually came from. And I'll be posting the next life update video very soon. With all the other shit that I've been up to since I've been sort of MIA. I've been MIA because of all this, like, it's just been nonstop. It's been nonstop. But I'm gonna be coming back to YouTube. I'm gonna start making videos again. Now that I'm finally getting into a place where I'm able to do that, so I'm really excited. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment for more. Don't be afraid to hit that little notification bell to get notified every single time that I post. It is very rarely, if ever, so I promise I won't annoy you with that. Remember, if you can't be good, you better be good at it.